The fire is already lit. Sit down, breathe, and listen. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. Carl Jung. That night, he arrived in silence, tired, not of the body, but of the soul. He was someone who had tried everything: inner work, meditation, affirmations, spiritual journeys. Someone who had done everything right and still felt stuck, as if something invisible was holding him back. Jung was there too, not as a master, not as an advisor, but as someone who had witnessed this exact moment many times before. The point where effort turns into exhaustion and the search becomes an escape. There were no words, only the fire, and a truth that rose firmly. What if all this movement to manifest is what's actually pulling you away from yourself? This video is a path back, not to success, nor to the miracle you've been asking for, but to the forgotten place where everything begins. You. You'll understand why your sincere efforts haven't brought results, what your unconscious is trying to say behind your most spiritual goals, and why stopping might be the deepest movement there is. But first, a warning. Real healing doesn't come in a hurry, and silence isn't the absence of answer, it's the beginning of listening. Are you ready to uncover what's been blocking your own transformation? Then stay. The fire still has more to reveal. He spent his life believing that he just needed to run fast enough, do more, learn more, heal more, that someday it would all align. After all, that's what he was told, right? That the universe rewards effort, that happiness comes to those who never stop seeking. But no one told him that sometimes what you're chasing isn't what you need, it's what you're trying to avoid feeling. Why do I want this so badly? He never stopped to ask. He only knew he needed it. Love, success, any sign that he was on the right path.
But as Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Maybe the desire that was driving him was just a mask for the pain chasing him. And in this silent game, the more he searched, the further he drifted. He said he wanted love, but what he truly feared was being abandoned again. He said he wanted success, but what he really carried was the need to prove he was enough. It wasn't ambition, it was fear disguised as a goal. And the universe, it doesn't hear your words, it hears your energy. And his energy was screaming, "I'm not enough yet. I need this to mean something." That's when everything got stuck. Because reality doesn't respond to what you want, it responds to what you are. As long as his identity was built on lack, fear, and urgency, everything he touched would slip away. Life wasn't punishing him, it was simply reflecting him. He kept saying, "I just want peace, I just want love, I just want to align my life." But what he was emitting was something else, a vibration of urgency, of fear, of unspoken neediness. And that's when it all started to make sense. You can repeat affirmations every day. You can tape mantras to the wall, build vision boards, light incense, and practice gratitude. But if your energy is still saying, "I don't have it," that is what the world will reflect back to you. Not because you're doing it wrong, but because you're doing it disconnected. Reality is not manipulated by the conscious mind. It is mirrored from the unconscious.
And if the unconscious still carries the belief that one must suffer to be worthy or prove themselves to be accepted, then life will keep delivering exactly what confirms that story. It was Jung who warned, "The unconscious is not merely a repository of the past, it is the starting point of the future." While he tried to manifest with words, his unconscious was manifesting through fear. And as always, the unconscious won. He had done everything they told him to, worked on himself, read the books, attended courses, moon cycles, retreats, therapy, and still he felt stuck. It was like an invisible lock, as if the soul whispered, "No matter how much you do, that's not the way." And that hurt more than failure. It hurt because it dismantled the belief that effort always pays off, and placed a new question on the table. What if doing the right thing isn't enough to access what's true? It wasn't a lack of will, nor laziness. It was a real emptiness, from someone who had tried everything and still felt no relief. The soul doesn't open through force, and the unconscious doesn't rewire through effort. It only changes when your vibration changes. That's when he realized maybe the problem wasn't what he was doing, but why. After everything, what came was the last thing he expected. Nothing. No sign, no relief, no immediate answer from the universe. Life continued exactly the same. Only now, he was too tired to try again. It was in that silence that the emptiness appeared. Not the emptiness of failure, but the kind that shows up when you stop fighting. Jung called this space the creative chaos, the phase where the old has already died, but the new hasn't yet been born. Nothing happens on the outside, but on the inside, something stirs, slowly, as if the soul were cleaning house, throwing out what no longer belongs and making space for what doesn't yet have a shape. This is the moment where many give up, because there's no map, no validation, no proof that anything is working. But it is exactly here that everything begins, not in achievement, but in the invisible reorganization of who you are. That's when he understood. He wasn't blocked by a lack of action, but by excess control. He had grown used to being what others call strong, the one who endures, the one who fixes, the one who never stops, never falls, never complains. But inside, he was at the edge, trying to uphold an image of balance that no longer made sense. And it was this constant effort to appear fine that became the lock. The world doesn't respond to the version you present. It responds to the version you actually sustain within. And in that moment, he realized what was preventing change wasn't a lack of intention. It was the fear of allowing himself to feel, without filters, without control, without justification. You might be doing everything right, but if you're trying to maintain an ideal version of yourself all the time, there's no room left for real life to come in. Because true transformation doesn't happen when you pretend to be strong. It begins when you stop hiding what you're truly feeling. After letting go of control, he thought everything would open up. But that's not what happened. What came was discomfort, doubt,
old memories, stored feelings, things he swore he had already healed. It was at this point that Jung returned to his mind not as an idea, but as a reminder. What you do not bring to consciousness will continue to direct your life. He realized there were still parts of him trying to be ignored. The unspoken anger, the fear of seeming weak, the shame of not being everything they expected him to be. As long as those parts remained exiled, he would keep repeating the same cycles. Because the universe doesn't respond to who you want to become. It responds to what you still haven't had the courage to face. And it's not about diving into the past, but accepting that you carry things that haven't yet been digested. And as long as they remain hidden, they will keep asking for a stage, in the form of repetition, blockage, or self-deception. You don't attract what you pretend to be. You attract what you integrate, even in silence. He thought he was on the path of evolution, always seeking more clarity, more answers, more awareness. But over time, he noticed something uncomfortable. This search wasn't coming from stillness. It was coming from urgency. Urgency to fix everything. Urgency to understand it all. Urgency to stop feeling what still hurt. And then came the question that shatters any justification. Do I really want to grow, or do I just want to stop feeling this way? That's when he understood. Even the desire to heal can become an escape. A subtle movement from someone who can no longer bear to be fully present in their own life and runs toward the future like someone trying to escape themselves. But there is no shortcut. You cannot heal what you're unwilling to sit with. The time life takes to change is the same time you take to become whole in the now. Peace doesn't come when everything is resolved. It comes when you stop running. Instead of continuing to force a change, he began to observe what was already there. And then a simple yet definitive idea arose. What if I was never really trying to manifest something new? What if this is just a process of remembering who I already am? Suddenly, the entire logic reversed. He no longer needed to chase, no longer needed to prove or earn. He only needed to recognize. Recognize that the version of him that feels whole, that feels at peace, that knows his own worth, that version already exists. It was simply buried over time, by expectations, by comparisons, by the fear of not being accepted for who he truly is. Jung once said, "He who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakens." And maybe this whole journey, with all the searching and striving, was never really about manifesting something external, but about unlocking what was forgotten within.
He didn't need to become anything. He didn't need to be more, understand more, vibrate higher. He only needed to return to what had been left behind, but never stopped existing. And the more he let go of external demands, the more space there was to recognize what had always been there: presence, worth, silence, clarity. The version of him that already knew how to live with lightness wasn't far away. It had simply been buried under layers of effort. He thought he was manifesting the future, but in truth, he was dismantling what never belonged to him: inherited fear, other people's beliefs, the constant urgency to prove himself. And in its place, a new sensation arose. Not euphoria, not victory, but calm. The calm of someone who no longer needs to push themselves to fit. The calm of someone who remembers, I already am. That night, he no longer felt the urgency to understand everything, nor the need to explain, nor the rush to fix. He simply stayed by the fire, quiet, present. And it was in that simple silence that Jung returned, not in words, but in the feeling that something had been passed through, as if the chaos had done its work, as if what needed to fall had finally fallen. Jung never promised quick answers. He didn't teach how to manifest miracles. He spoke of processes, of cycles, of slow integrations that reorganize who we are from the inside out. The tree you see today, he wrote, was once a seed that endured the darkness. Maybe that was it. It wasn't about manifesting. It was about enduring the silence with clarity until something inside realigned. No noise, no spectacle, only truth. What he lived that night wasn't a breakdown. It was the beginning of a different kind of process, slower, truer. Jung called this path individuation, the movement toward wholeness, not toward perfection, but toward the integration of the parts you've hidden for so long. Culture taught us to chase goals, to compare timelines, to measure ourselves through numbers, approval, external validation. But Jung pointed somewhere else. The center is not outside. The center is within, and it can only be reached when you stop performing and start recognizing. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to heal all your pain before you exist fully. Jung's proposal was never about ascending. It was about descending to the place where your true self lives. He said, know all the theories, master all the techniques, but when you touch a human soul, be just another human soul. Maybe what the world needs is less goal setting and more presence, less affirmations and more silence, less urgency and more connection. That night, I didn't receive answers, and maybe that's exactly why everything finally made sense. There was no more urgency, no pressure, no silent attempt to prove something to anyone. For the first time, I wasn't trying to change my life. I was simply present in it. And it was there, in that simple place, that I realized nothing outside of me needed to happen for something inside me to begin. Since then, every time doubt returns, or when the world demands versions of me that no longer feel true, I don't run. I return to the fire. If something in you softened during this vigil, it's not because of what I said. It's because you heard yourself. Maybe this video didn't bring an answer, but it pointed to a path, the one back to yourself. Jung once wrote, "He who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakens." If that awakening began today, honor it with silence, with stillness, with presence. That night I understood everything. And ever since then, whenever the world feels heavy, I return to the fire. See you soon.